Alright, doing another Hospital Day video. Yeah, I know, there's probably no point in it. But he made a video. Anyway, I'm just going to I'll play little clips of his video and respond to the ones that really need a response. And we'll leave it at that.
To be confused about my obligations here. I am under no obligation to bring forth a counter-argument. The lack of counter-argument from me is not evidence in support of your argument.
Yes, it is. Sorry, so you're making an argument, okay, for some sort of premise of what validates evidence, okay? And what validates evidence, especially in trial law, is the possibility, okay, that creates something called a reasonable doubt. And the only thing that can create these reasonable doubts are reasonable scenarios that would demonstrate that it was possible that this guy didn't do it. Reasonable possibilities. You could come up with a conspiracy theory or some other theory that would explain the circumstance, and it would do it with something called evidence and demonstrate that there's some reasonable capacity for this not to have happened the way you think it happened or the way you're arguing it happened. But certainly it is a primary constituent of the incredibility of a story as truth or as the fact that there exists some counter theory. Now, if you don't have a counter theory, that is a substantial indicator that the theory you have is the correct theory. If there's no counter theory, then it's likely a pretty good theory. It just, it is not conclusive proof. That's always difficult to obtain, but it is corroborating evidence. The evidence of the credibility of a statement is the absence of any reasonable counter statement. It's a fact, but again, we're stuck at a premise. You think that doesn't substantiate an idea. The fact that I can present you with the evidence of evolution and then say there's no counter explanation for these dinosaur fossils. There's no counter explanation for why they're ordered in the soil. There's no counter explanation. I can give you the evidence and say there's no counter reasonable interpretation of this evidence. That means this interpretation, that the planet must be of a certain age, seems like it's irrefutable. It now has credibility because you don't have a reasonable explanation besides aliens are tricking us or some sort of nonsense. You can't understand that? So anyway, so again, with your arrogance, you pontificate and say this is what logic is. I'm the authority. And even your understanding of the structure of conversation, discussion, debate, and argumentation, your piety is obnoxious, because these are all certainly refutable, certainly reasonably disputed premises that you wish to obligate people to confine themselves to. So I'll say once again, until you provide me, I have a perfectly rational theory. It has no holes in it from my perspective. And I'm arguing that the only thing that can defeat the evidence I have, the DNA evidence and the size 14 Bruno Mollies and the cut finger and all the other evidence I have of who committed this crime, none of that has any incredibility. None of that has any disputability. So all you have to counter that evidence is some theory of conspiratory nature or some theory explaining how there's some mechanism that is yet unseen. But you're not doing that. So without the counter argument, my evidence seems quite conclusive. Okay, he's going to say something like he is arguing my argument, that he's not providing a counter theory, that he is actually arguing my argument and doing that in some kind of effective way outside of pejorative dismissal. And I think that's all he has, is pejorative dismissal. He hasn't counter-argued the fundamental premise that value is created by sentient organisms. He hasn't disputed that. He hasn't disputed that, like Martians or Venetians or Moonikins, It is the existence of the needful beast that creates the value. It's their projection from their brain that creates the value. We are not recognizing the value of them. Therefore, we're not missing them. Therefore, we're not distressed in any manner that they don't exist. There's no harm to the universe for their non-existence. These are all facts of the circumstance. And how has he disputed the fact that that fact would also hold true for Earthlings? Has he disputed that fact? Has he disputed the fact that Earthlings will inevitably become that, a non-existent thing, and that they will have redundantly pissed themselves over rainbows for absolutely nothing in the end? Yeah, no, he hasn't disputed any of that. He hasn't refuted any of that. He hasn't made any of that non-logical. His counter-argument, his destruction of my argument is prevention has no value. Preventing harm has no value. That's his counter-argument so far. Well, I'll play.
If it's up to scrutiny, this is the purpose I get to make for myself. You don't get to choose. You don't get to say, I'm obligated, and you don't have to suffer scrutiny without me bringing forth an argument.
Without you bringing forth, yeah, I don't have to. No, I do. I am allowed to say I'm not obliged to suffer your scrutiny when you don't bring an argument. So again, you're claiming you have argued with the fundamental premises. I'm arguing you haven't even come close to arguing those premises, and on top of that, you have no counter theory. So you haven't disputed my DNA evidence, and on top of it, you have no reasonable counter suspect for the crime. That means it's pretty much a slam dunk for me. Thank you very much. I'll be back. Okay, I should have played more of this clip because it really is hilarious. So he's made the accusation that I have pejoratively dismissed his argument. So get a load of this.
Bringing forth an argument. You're the one making an argument. I'm the one standing up saying, that's full of shit. That's full of shit on so many levels. It lacks accuracy, it lacks depth, it's superficial, you lack intellectual courage, intellectual integrity, intellectual consideration, full stop.
Now, those aren't apparently pejorative dismissals. Yeah, okay, sure, fella. Yeah, they're just vacant, right? So he says they lack depth. My arguments lack depth, and yet that's the depth of his argument. He just says it's too simple. Okay, what does that mean? It's intellectually dishonest. How so? It's hypocrisy. No, I already demonstrated how there's no hypocrisy. I mean, he's just wrong on every... I mean, he hasn't got a single thing right yet, except for the fact that I think he's an asshole. It's pathetic. Anyway, I'll be back. Alright, so he's making an accusation that he has made an argument and that the premises and the statements I've made are some kind of house of cards, and that somehow he's collapsed them with some sort of brilliant statement. Preventing harm is equal to 0. Okay. No, that didn't work. On me, anyway. Sorry. I don't see the flaw in my card stack. So my card stack is basically made out of determinism, evolution, DNA, crude forces. Okay, so let's just use that one statement. Precious commodities controlled by crude forces. Okay, so how has he countered-argued that as a fundamental, important fact of our existence? That there are precious commodities, valuable things, the goodies, and they're being controlled by ignorance and stupidity and, harsh, brutal, nasty forces that have no appreciation for the value whatsoever. They're allowing the value to be raped and pillaged and horrible things to happen to it. How has he taken that and demonstrated that statement to be a house of cards as a truth underlying the existence of life on Earth? precious commodities controlled by crude forces. Where's his deconstruction?
They're not trying to make an argument. What we're saying is, you are full of shit. You need to do. You can. Well, you don't have to. You can.
Pejorative dismissals. Yeah, I think that's a pejorative dismissal. But it's okay. Keep going.
Mate, you can. You don't get to stand up and say, I defend my arguments if you don't defend them. But you choose. You don't have to defend it. But that's what I'm here doing. I'm saying.
Defend it against what? How can I possibly defend against the argument that preventing harm has no value? I can't tell you how silly that is. It's telling me Bugs Bunny has 14 toes. Says you?
You're full of shit. Defend your argument. I'm pointing to the features of your argument that are lacking.
Well, yeah, shoot, I'm not seeing that. You need to point with your finger or something. Point to the features of my argument. Show me how my statement, precious commodities controlled by crude forces, has been in some way challenged as a fundamental premise fact of why the game we're playing is broken. That crude forces are in control, that crude forces made it, and that it has every evidence of squandering and wasting precious commodities. That's not a good thing. That is intrinsically and fundamentally a bad thing. And so without some sort of redeeming statement explaining how the crude forces got it right, you're not making a counter-argument. You're not diminishing the validity of that statement by just saying to me, you don't value harm prevention. I can't do anything with that. How explicit can I state this? You are too fucking insane for me to communicate with. You are insane.
Pointing to the features of you that are lacking in approaching this argument.
Well, whatever. I'll be back.
You know, Inmendham has the greatest hissy fits about when people misinterpret him, and it's like, where did I say that? Where did I say that? You quote me. I didn't say that. I mean, where have I said any of this?
Okay, the subject is value relativism. I was just pointing out that the argument from popularity is meaningless. And yes, you've used the argument for popularity when you said, I make my own meaning. You're saying that people just can make their own meaning, which means that the only thing that has value is whatever the majority says, because meaning is arbitrary. And the only thing that would make it non-arbitrary is popularity, obviously. You know, you're going to make a distinction and say somehow the made-up definitions of meaning, that the minority definition of made-up meaning, would have more credibility somehow than the more popular made-up meaning. So as soon as you say I make my own meaning, okay, you've stated it by implication. All right, there's no way to get around it, and I think you have actually said it in some videos. You know, you have made the argument from majority before. So I have committed no foul against you. So you're a liar. Yeah, again.
All the analogies that he constantly puts words in my mouth that bear no relation to what I'm saying.
Yeah, well, prove it. Yeah, I'm sorry. I no. You're the one who said it. We make our own meaning. You said those words.
This is the very definition of straw manning your interlocutor to death.
I mean, it just doesn't make any sense, right? I mean, he basically believes that there was some civilization that...
Yeah, well, I won't go into all that. So you get the thing, right? There's no straw man here. He advocates for value relativism. He says there is no value if there is no purpose, which, again, I haven't argued that purpose is essential to value, but purpose is the only way you can fix something that's running a deficit. So if you're going to run a deficit, you have to have some profit in the future that you're going to be gleaning from that deficit. And without an overriding purpose, you couldn't justify something that's running inefficiently. So a car that's burning gas that isn't moving isn't going to get the seal of approval. It's going to have the key turned off. Anyway, I'll be back. Okay, so he just played, I don't know, 10 minutes of some douchebag talking about complex questions require complex answers and simple questions require simple answers, and yeah, it's his theory. I think his theory is crap. Sometimes questions aren't that complicated. Solutions are always complicated. Formulas are complicated. Math can be complicated. All right, but sometimes questions have really, seemingly complex questions can have really simple answers. And so it's just silly. Should we build nuclear power plants? Okay, it's a simple question. Should have a simple answer. It's going to have an answer of yes or no. And what do you do to figure it out? You have a trial. You try the two proposals, and you weigh them. But the mechanism of your weighing can be, in some circumstances, there can be a circumstance that's a game ender, a truth that just ends the conversation, where you basically realize, oh, this won't be a solution because, we don't have storage facilities for batteries or something, or some other mechanism, some other thing that just says this won't be a solution to the problem. This doesn't answer the question completely. This doesn't resolve the outstanding theoretical alternative theories things. So but you're saying that you know that the statement precious commodities controlled by crude forces, you know that statement is somehow disqualified because it's too simple a statement regarding a description of what life is. You haven't demonstrated any of that. You haven't, again, proposed any. What is the extra ingredient besides your perceptual delusions? Well, anyway, so now he's on this thing over the style issue again, and who insults who first. And again, I didn't start the insult war, shithead. You're the one who says your argument is too simple. Your argument is this, and it's intrinsically and fundamentally. And even to claim that somebody's argument is illogical, it carries with it. Okay, I'm sorry to tell you this. I'm sorry you weren't aware of this fact. But if somebody holds something valuable and you insult it, it's like if I looked at your kid and I said, man, that's one fucking ugly kid. Right? I'm insulting your kid, right? But you're going to take offense, aren't you? So, it's really idiotic of you to think you can step over and dismiss pejoratively and cosmetically somebody else's philosophy without that being counted as an insult to them personally. If you tell somebody, if they bought something at the store and you say to them, man, what a piece of shit, I wouldn't pay 10 cents for that. Don't you think you've insulted the purchaser? You can't figure that out, shithead? Well, of course you can figure it out. It's that you're using it to your advantage in the argument. You're pretending to have some kind of integrity, and all you are is a cheap shot artist, okay, who uses a lot of slow and fancy language to disguise the fact that you're saying absolutely nothing, and all you're doing is insulting the other person. So again, fuck you. Jesus. Be back.
Thought out. Only if you don't agree with him, he doesn't care. You don't have a right to life. He's going to press the button.
Yeah, so this is another silly argument. No, what I've made clear is you don't have a right to impose, okay, harm for your projected value, for your made-up meaning. You will not make your own meaning, okay, by exploiting and abusing. So, yeah, if you're going to have to impose on something to make your own meaning, I'm going to stop you. So until you explain how you're not imposing, all right, that's right, I will press the button. So another part of this argument is somehow I'm supposed to lack confidence. I'm supposed to bow to some authority. So if we're at a debate or something, I'm somehow supposed to concede because people disagree with me. I don't know what I'm talking about. That's his basic conclusion here. Because there is disagreement, therefore you can't believe you're right. Because nobody can be right. I mean, that's the implication of what he's saying. Somebody's going to have to be right. Somebody's authority is legitimate authority. And your standard is it's not Inmendham. Well, that's a fine standard, but I guess you have to defend it with a little bit more than that. Saying I'm wrong is not demonstrating how anybody else is righter. So until you show me somebody who's righter, yeah, I'm going to act accordingly. I think I'm right. I'm highly confident I'm right. I would invest everything I deem precious in my rightness. I'd put it all on the table. So I'd be all in my investment. So based on that standard, okay, and the fact that there appears to be no other competition willing to be so willing to defend some alternative with a similar passion, and with anything called a reasonable argument besides "Hooga Buckabog" or some kind of gibberish, the Lord is God or something. Yeah, I'm not convinced that I shouldn't act on my best judgment. Thank you very much. So, I'll be back. Girl. She sort of has a certain thing, you must say. She has, well, it's got those eyes. Those eyes always do it for me, eyes. Alright, so this part's really absolutely hilarious anyway. So now he's back on the fairness subject. So again, this has absolutely nothing to do with the Benatar argument. Has nothing to do with all the preceding videos. Has nothing to do with the argument he's critiquing. It's a separate argument about the nature of life and these, like I said, the nature of gameplay and the requirement of consent and fairness for a game to be qualified as a good enough game. We all understand that. We've all watched sports. We all understand the purpose of the referee, the idea that the umpire needs to be non-biased, that everybody has to be trying to do their best job always and continually to maintain fairness. Okay, that's why we don't like steroids and all this other stuff. It's because it's creating this unfair circumstance where now players, to play baseball, you're obligated to poison your body and give yourself cancer. Yeah, that's not a fair burden, a fair hurdle to have to jump to be to enjoy being an athlete. You should be able to enjoy your athleticism and enjoy the competition without having to give yourself cancer to be competitive. So we can understand these things. We can understand the obvious breaking of fairness. Now his chart of ethics, which is just a pile of absolute crap. So this is complexity for the sake of complexity. And he doesn't even understand these words. He puts justice in the center, as if justice were a possibility, as if justice means anything, right? So he thinks justice, the idea that, okay, somebody rapes and kills your daughter, you kill them, that somehow that's a solution, right? So the very word he mocked, prevention of harm, now that would be a great word to have in the center, right, is prevention. Okay, fail safe. These would be great. Fairness would be a great word to have in the center. But what did he put there? A useless term, a desperate term, a term that seldom does justice create solution. Seldom, it will not undo. Justice is not the undo button. Fairness is the undo button. Fairness, it will prevent the injustice. You can't have the injustice if you have fairness. If 13-year-old kids are protected fairly, they will not be harmed. If they're respected appropriately, they will not be harmed. This is the idea of the fairness. And obviously in life there is no fairness. Kids get cancer not because they're bad kids, because they're unlucky. okay, because they were exposed to the wrong chemical at the wrong age, because their mother took a frickin' headache pill, for all kinds of stupid reasons that have nothing to do with them, nothing to do with any act they committed that was wrong, nothing to do with any kind of justice. It has everything to do with unfairness, and we can recognize the unfairness. You could look at the economic system and you could say, what's the most grotesque unfairness? Is that some people are born out of a vagina that's the golden vagina. Did they earn it? Did they pass a test? Did they do anything of merit to deserve to fly out of the golden vagina and be awarded $10 million at their 17th birthday? Absolutely nothing. No merit, nothing. Nothing fair. And yet this contest will decide whether you will suffer in life, whether you will be satisfied in life, whether you will have opportunity in life to demonstrate what you are, or to be to be all that you can be. This contest will decide these things, and yet we create an arbitrary and nonsensical randomization of merit. We give the gold medal, essentially, by picking a name out of a hat, and call that a rational contest. So that doesn't make any sense. And we can discern these things if there's going to be a game. But I'm arguing in the more fundamental argument that the game can fundamentally not accomplish this thing. It cannot accomplish this ideal, because the game itself is made out of a negative state being the first cause. The first cause is the deprivation, and you'll never correct for that deficit. You'll never be able to create interest in life that will ever pay the initial investment of deprivation. So, moving on. Alright, another boring seminar by some asshole, mainly talking about relevance, precision, and accuracy. Obviously Hofstadter's implication is that somehow I'm lacking in those departments, and somehow he has provided abundance in this relevance, precision, and accuracy. So the previous subject of fairness is totally irrelevant to the Benatar argument. The precision of, preventing harm has no value is void. Yeah, and the accuracy of it, certainly I would dispute. But anyway, so now he's going to make some claims about this chart. I'll let him make the claims and then I'll answer them.
When Inmendham gives us this table in offer of making his argument, his Benatar argument, concrete.
His Benatar argument concrete. Now, there's direct quotes of me saying, this is not my argument, it's Benatar's argument. That's right. The asymmetry, I have stated it, not as a piece of concrete proof of something. I've stated it directly. The words have come out of my mouth where I've said this is an indicator of something. This should give us pause, this fact. It gives you reason to start thinking about, wait a minute, is the value of earthlings on Earth just a projection of value? And that's the value of it. I've stated that. I've said this doesn't say it all. Clearly, right here, you could argue within this realm right here, if life is producing a good of a higher value than the harm it's producing. So this can be argued to be some other number than a zero, based on some other evaluation. I'm just saying that the idea, the fact that there is no inverse between harm and the idea that well, look, I've already made the argument, but I'll make it again. I mean, I would argue that it's all harm, okay, and that fun is just the absence of harm, and it is taking harm away that is a good. And quite obviously, you can't do that in an environment where you don't create harm first. So obviously, in a non-existent environment, there is no harm. There's no harm to correct. Therefore, you can create no good. Therefore, there's no potential for any value. So that's another way of saying it, but it's the same argument. But again, it isn't proof of something. It's just an indicator that fundamentally our notion of good and bad is wrong. That like pressure or like sewage, like pollution, it's something that happens in degrees. And less pollution is good, okay? But there is no such thing as something outside of the pollution. So reducing the pollution, that's the zero-sum argument. You know this argument. You know that that's my argument, that it's a zero-sum game. This is Benatar's argument. You were the one requiring us to go to Benatar's argument. So again, this is an inaccurate paraphrase. This is an inaccurate statement about the context of who created this argument and what you expected other people to do. So you're the one who's out of bounds.
It's relevant to scrutinise whether there is a logic to this table, whether it obeys the rules of logic, whether it's consistent, whether the fact that we're assigning numbers necessitates we inspect this table in the hard, concrete realm of mathematical scrutiny of the.
Yeah, again, it wasn't proposed for that purpose at all. So again, you're the one who has say this is the argument, this math is the definition, this proves life can't work. That's not what it proves. It's what it indicates. It's being used as an indicator to think more about the mechanisms that control us behaviorally and control us in terms of our perception of value. That this chart gives you pause, okay, to question the assumptions that have existed in human dogma for 10,000 years. They are dogmatic assumptions of purpose and function, and this chart indicates that maybe they are preposterously foolish assumptions. Fuck. Alright, so let's go back to pejorative dismissal. Yeah. So anyway, this guy has the temerity to call somebody else a hypocrite. Just amazing.
That's it. Inmendham admits to being somewhat of a sexually driven character. And so just because his life, he might be trapped in his animalistic sides and unable to get out, doesn't mean he can necessarily extend his worldview to everybody else. Also, relatively recently,
I guess that's the argument from your psychology is showing or something. So yeah, so when I say precious commodities controlled by crude forces, that's some sort of psychological thing. And the irony is he's playing clips from Donnie Darko as if Hofladay is the truth teller, and I'm the one talking from status quo, simplistic, dogmatic, life lessons. When, I mean, quite obviously the inverse is the truth here. He's the one talking from conventional, I had my 1.2 children, or whatever his notions of purpose and function are. If there's any guy trapped behind his picket fence, it's this fucker. Oh, hilarious.
You know, I see him looking out of his window and saying, wishing how his neighbours should be cast out of their hole.
Oh, Jesus. You know, there's no point in bringing up a totally different context. And, eventually I'm going to, I'll do some video over there and demonstrate and try to give you a flavor. For 35 years I've lived next door to these people and how they have diminished and destroyed the environment here. And the fact that they haven't paid rent in the last 5 years, if you're a little bit intelligent, you might figure out that that means the other 4 tenants have to pay all the bills for the landlord. If they don't pay rent, that means we have to pay more. We get less services. You can't figure that out? That they're taking from us. They're not taking from the man. They're not taking from the system. They're taking from us. And I'll show you the 9 million other ways they took from us. okay, every fucking day. And that's what I object to. It's not, I don't object to people being poor, and I don't think poor people should be mistreated, but I'm just saying these aren't poor people. They have 4 times my income, okay, and they don't pay their rent. Come on. They buy, $10 lunches. I buy 30-pound bags of rice. I mean, I'm just saying, it's obnoxious for you to tell me how I should react to people I've had to live with for 35 years. A blight. I've had a fucking pustule growing on my ass for 35 years. I'm supposed to have empathy and sympathy for it because it finally was told, account for yourself. I mean, fuck you. I wish the blight on you, fucker. I hope you get the neighbors you deserve.
And I listen in trash talk, poor uneducated people.
They're not uneducated. People have attempted to educate them for 35 years on basic decency, basic fairness rules. They say it to them, they say, yes, I understand, and the next day they stick the knife in your back even deeper.
Like they have no worthiness. So I don't have to take this man as credible at all.
So a circumstance he knows nothing about, and he's going to judge my credibility based on 35 years of it. And that to him is a complex argument. That's being relevant, precise, and accurate. What he just did was relevant, precise, and accurate. No, I think it was pejoratively dismissive. That's what it was.
In fact, I don't. I think he's one of the biggest, hugest hypocrites I see out on the internet.
Okay, so that's really enough, right? I mean, the joke's on you and such, and you ought to quit. You ought to quit talking to the mirror, okay? Because everything you're saying is about yourself, shithead. I'm over here. Yeah, so you've misidentified your target. Your ass is blind, and it's confused you with me. That's kind of like saying I am rubber and you're glue. Ha 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 ha. So anyway, there is some ending on here. I guess he's going to play some more movie clips or more lectures, but we'll see if it's worth it. And if it's not, that's the end of the video. And if it is, then I'll say something to sum up.
Thinking is trying to explain, and if it is unclear, it doesn't communicate. It doesn't explain. It doesn't learn. So if I say, I've unclearly learned mathematics, that's another way of saying I haven't learned it. Or I've unclearly explained it to the students.
Oh, crap. Yeah, this guy's as bad as Hoffaday, so no wonder he likes him. Anyway, so yeah, we're done. He says he has some sort of questions or something that he's willing to add, but I don't think he will. But whatever, whatever. I'm completed. I'm finished. I'm done. There's nothing here. There's no argument to be made. Again, what are you standing by? We get to make up value designations. There's no evidence, even from your own consciousness, of anything that could possibly be of real value, intrinsically, fundamentally, and therefore you can make it up, and everybody's entitled to make it up, and that's the game we're playing. Make it up. I don't think that's the game we're in. I don't think it has anything to do with reality, so I think you're pretty much insane. There you go.